VP of Publishing, and he will be giving the speech on mastering LTV and the deconstruction of TapNation AB testing process. So please welcome Florian. He will have 1 hour, and you will be able to ask any questions you want after the talk.
Okay, thank you very much, Natalia, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today in the water hole. I feel right at home here because I surf quite a bit, so this is the perfect place for me. We'll be talking about the A/B test process at TapNation for about 30 to 45 minutes maybe, and I have some Q&A session. So without further ado, I guess let's go and get right into the meat of things. Before I start talking about the A/B test process itself and what it is all about, since I'm not sure everybody is very familiar with the mobile market, I was thinking of introducing the test process of hyper-casual games. So, as Natalia introduced, I'm VP of Publishing at TapNation. We are a mobile game publisher centered around hyper-casual games. Hyper-casual games have a very specific production cycle to them, different from casual, mid-core to more hardcore games, which are longer. And it goes like this. Basically, you have the prototyping phase. The prototyping phase, depending on the type of game you're dealing with, if it's a runner, if it's a simulation game, a puzzle game, or whatever, will be from 1 week to 3 weeks of production. Maybe a month for the more polished game, it depends. But yeah, you're constructing what we call, what everybody knows here, I guess, a minimum viable product, something that is very short and that will showcase the quality, the overall quality of the game, but in a minimum quantity aspect. So, and the goal obviously is to do what we call a Cpi test. So Cpi stands for cost per install, of course, and nowadays we usually test on TikTok in the first test because of the changes that happen on the iOS 14 side of things on iOS. Cpi got higher on Facebook, so now we test on TikTok mostly. We start with Android on the first test, and then we move on to iOS afterwards. And the goal, as you can see here, is to reach under 40-cent CPI in the first test. And in order to get to a publish phase, we need to reach 30% day one retention at the very least. Of course, that doesn't mean that if we get like 41 cents or maybe 45 cents CPI, we necessarily kill the game. We look at other metrics, obviously, such as playtime, such as day 3 retention, day 7 retention, and we move on to the make or break phase. So we test the game for, I would say, 4 or 5 days. We see what the CPI is, we see what the playtime, the retention is, and depending on the metrics, we kill or we iterate on a game. When we move on to the iteration phase, it stands for about 1 to 2 months. It really depends on the game, because it really depends on how much content you have to add to the game. Obviously, once again, if it's a runner, it's easier to do these type of things. If it's a simulation game, very content heavy, it'll take longer, of course, and if you have to polish the visuals, it'll take longer. So 1 to 2 months is usually how it goes when it comes to the iteration phase. And the goal is really to reach 30% day one retention. Of course, these metrics, some of you may know, these metrics used to be higher in the hyper-casual game market. We used to reach for 45% day one retention, but as the competition grew harder, the metrics got lower. The expectations got a little lower, and you could get a profitable game with lower metrics. So once you have these, like let's say 40 cents CPI, 30% day one, this is an okay game. This isn't the best game. Obviously, like a very, very good game would be like a 20-cent CPI game, and a 40% day one, this would be absolutely perfect. We can go to the final test before moving to the publish phase. So the final test goes like this. We plug the ads, the interstitials, the rewarded videos, and we see what money the user brings in. Basically, we do a profitability test. So the CPI is the money that you pay for one user, and the LTV is what one user generates. Obviously, the goal of the game here is to have an LTV higher than the CPI. If we successfully go through the profitability test, then we finally get to the holy grail, I want to say. So the publish phase and the support phase. the live up cycle. And at this point, the game is profitable, the game is scaled up, the campaigns are running. Usually on hyper casual, you have a top charter, hopefully a top 10 game, a top 20 game, whatever. Even a top 100 is fine. And then you basically work on improving the LTV of the game, the money generated by users. So at this point, you already have a product that is working well, and you're trying to make it more profitable. So that's the introduction of the hyper-casual market, I want to say. Maybe most of you might have already known all of that, but I just wanted to cover the basis. Let's move on to the LTV. What is LTV exactly? I mentioned it a little bit. So LTV stands for the lifetime value, and it basically is an estimate of the money that a user generates in its entire life cycle. So that goes like from the installation to where the player will never come back into your game. How much money would he have brought in? The calculation for it, there's variations to it depending on what type of product you're working with, but basically it's like the ARPDAO, so average revenue per daily active user, multiplied by the retention of your users, obviously. And in hyper-casual games, LTV ranges from, generally speaking, 30 cents at the lowest, I would say, up to $2. So here we're already reaching a very high LTV for hyper-casual games, but we've seen those numbers before on certain products. And at this point, you have a really profitable game, I would say, because the CPI doesn't necessarily get too high on hyper-casual. Maybe the most you will see is $1, $1.20. So you have a lot of profitability coming in with every user in your game. So how do you improve LTV? And this is where we get to the main topic of this presentation, is basically the A/B tests. Well, the first thing, obviously, you can do to improve your LTV is touch the product and content of your game. There's multiple things that we can do on this side. So, for example, we took example, obviously, of games that we published. Here you can see on the left, you have a screenshot of one of our most successful games. I had the pleasure of dealing with this one. It's Giant Rush. For example, you can modify the level progression and the implementation of obstacles. This was a big one for us on Giant Rush specifically. Like the first 15 levels of the game are handmade, and for the rest, afterwards, it's procedurally generated with chunks of level pre-manufactured, I want to say. But the rest of the levels are going to be procedurally generated, basically. And usually what you want to do also, especially for a runner, is have this bonus and boss level structure. And this is something that you can forget actually working on a runner, but this is very effective because usually the gameplay, the core gameplay of a runner is usually very simple. So figuring out how to do an interesting bonus level and an interesting boss level is what going to get you a really good boost in terms of retention and in terms of play time, because it keeps the flow of the game interesting for the user. So that's one of the first things you can do. On the right side of the screen, you can see rock crawling as well as guess their answer. So rock crawling is like a racing game. I don't know if some of you played old Flash games on motorcycle where you play with the balance. If you move too fast, you're going to turn around the bike or the car, in this case. Very simple game, pretty well-known core gameplay mechanic, I would say. We implemented into this game a tournament feature where I think it is in level 6, you unlock the tournament. So you're going to be put against harder AI. We're in a hyper-casual game, so usually there's not real-time multiplayer. But you're going to be put against harder AI in specific geographic settings, basically. So if you do a tournament in Brazil, you're going to have like a luxurious jungle and stuff like that. And we implemented this as well in Guess Their Answer. Guess Their Answer is a Family Feud-inspired game. So, for example, here, unfortunately, this screenshot is in French, but it's written, quote, a breakfast beverage. I don't know, hot cocoa, coffee, whatever. We put a tournament system in that, so most of you might imagine it already. It goes like 100 participants move up the charts in order to be the last man standing, basically. it depends on the game, obviously. You cannot implement a tournament feature in every single games. In Giant Rush, it would have been very complicated. But in a racing or a trivia game, it is much more coherent and much more pertinent to do that sort of system. So this had a great results for us on our 3 games. You can also play with, well, most of you once again may know what we call the 3 Cs: camera, control, character. Camera usually has a really good impact. You're not very sure in the beginning where you test a game that you have necessarily the right camera setup. So I always recommend working on an hyper-casual game to test different camera setup. And it goes for both the product, the game itself, as well as the creative side, the promotion side of things, because it can have really good impact on both sides of things. For example, on the left, we have a screenshot from Cpi Test. So in Cpi Test, basically, it's an old and release game. You hold, the foot will get higher, and as you release, the foot will step down. Very simple. Satisfaction-based game. We tried a lot of different cameras on this one, and we figured out that the best camera setup when it comes to the creative and the game itself was this focus on the foot itself. We also tried, obviously, seeing the whole character, but it distracts from what is the core satisfaction and the main focus of the game, which is like stepping on objects and seeing the particle effects and the destruction happening. But here we also did something that is that we might forget to do on other games. We left different camera setup in the game. What I mean by that is that for the first 4 levels, you're going to have this camera on the screenshot, and at level 5, you're going to see your whole character. And we did that for 2 reasons, mostly. In order, of course, to diversify a little bit the gameplay, but also to add value to the skins that we implemented in the game. Of course, we have like hair, dresses, pants, and stuff like that. In this camera setup, you can only see shoe and the pants that you're wearing. But if we see the whole character, then the hair, the jacket that you're wearing also has value. So it gives us more room for monetization, of course. In the middle, you can see a screen of Webmaster. And in Webmaster, this is an FPS game where you're playing as a Spider-Man character. Spider-Man-inspired character, I shouldn't say Spider-Man. And we implemented special levels. So, of course, in the comics of Spider-Man, what is, I would say, the main focus is always this new villain. There's always a villain in the Spider-Man comics. So we implemented those villains, which are very great goals when it comes to midterm to long-term goals in the game. Here there is Rhino, but also we put Vulture, Venom, Carnage, and so on and so on. And these are blocked behind rewarded videos, of course, in order to monetize the game better. This is going to have a great impact in terms of impressions per user, rewarded videos, and of course, the LTV. And finally, on the right side of the screen, you can see a direct screenshot from the shop present in Cpi Test. As you can see, those are Air Jordan 1s. I was also the one that published sneaker art on our catalog. So obviously, I'm a big sneaker fan, as you might see, also wearing on my shoes. We implemented Air Jordan 1s and saw great results in the game. It was a high converting, rewarded placement in the game. And since it's a female character-oriented game, Cpi Test, we also put very popular female shoes as well, like Gucci shoes and stuff like that. So yeah, always try to think, what is your audience? What type of audience you appeal to, and what would people like to see in your game? What is like the most obvious thing? Usually the obvious and the simplest thing is also the best thing to do in your game. So this goes for the product and content. Now we're going to move to what I master a little less. That is the ad monetization techniques. So let's go. What you can do on a monetization aspect of things is test the integration of new ad networks. Obviously, the more ad networks you have in your game, the more money you're going to be able to bring in. Does it improve the average revenue per daily active user? Like, not putting a lot of networks is not necessarily going to bring the revenue up. So you have to check if it actually improves on the average revenue per daily active user. When it comes to the waterfall itself, you have to check different floor prices, of course, and you have to make sure that it doesn't affect the latency of the ads showing up in your games. You can test in different geo tiers as well, with different pricing. Sorry, I'm laughing because I see my head of user acquisition laughing in the stand as well. You can test different pricing in geo tier, of course, to reducing the length of your waterfall and improving the eCPM for each of your users. And as well, you have to use the tools present in your ad mediation platform to the best of your ability, because there's a lot of things in there that allow you to improve on the revenue of your users, and you don't have to touch at all on the product on this side. So those are all very good advice brought by our VP of monetization, not by me, obviously. Moving on to more monetization techniques. And these ones are the ones that I'm very familiar with, though. Obviously, I think a lot of publishers have started implementing this, I think most of them at this point, in-game ads. And at the beginning, it wasn't super performing, but the more and more people are implementing it, the more and more performance we see coming from these in-game ads. So, and it actually, we tested it, we A/B tested it at this point, and we saw that it was even improving on the metrics when it comes to playtime, when it comes to retention on certain games, such as Giant Rush, for example. So it goes like this. In Giant Rush, you're a guy running on a track. You have a balloon next to you that is going to showcase an ad for whatever, Coca-Cola or whatever. And obviously, this is an additional placement to what you already have in your game, interstitial and rewarded. So this is basically free money coming to you. And same as the previous tips, you have to A/B test it as well. There's different in-game ad partner that are going to bring different revenues. So you have to A/B test all of that. And obviously, you have to make sure that it doesn't affect your metrics, it doesn't affect your playtime and retention. You want it to be positive, obviously. There's a new thing coming also in this market, which are audio ads. We've tested it very recently, actually, and saw some pretty good improvement when it comes to the revenue generated. Pretty simple and pretty self-explanatory. There's not any visual feature or anything in a game added. It's purely audio. This might not be the best fit for hyper-casual games, because a lot of players don't play with audio when they play hyper-casual games, but we did see some improvement when it comes to the LTV of our players with this. So I recommend trying it in any case and A/B testing it to make sure that it is positive. And obviously the last one, and this is the biggest one I would say on a monetization aspect, is the ad frequency. And this can be a game changer on certain games. So the usual rule for an hyper-casual game used to be every 30 seconds you get an interstitial. But if your game is not profitable with that, maybe you want to try every 15 seconds you get an interstitial. For example, on our game Sneaker Art, which is a simulation game, you have 3 phases of customization. You have first the painting of the shoe itself, then the lacing up of the laces, and then you have putting it in the box. What if originally we had 1 interstitial per this whole core gameplay loop, but we recently tested having more interstitial appear in between phases. So between the painting and the laces, you're getting an interstitial. Between the laces and the box, you're getting an interstitial. Of course, this is to be A/B tested because you can tire up your user much faster as well. But for us, it had a very good impact on sneakers specifically. So testing ad frequency is really, really important on any game that you're bringing to the soft launch phase as well as the publish phase. And it can have, once again, a huge impact on the LTV of users. Wow. Okay, moving on to our testing platform itself. So I didn't really touch on I would say, the technical aspect of A/B testing. And this is how it goes for us. We created a platform online directly where you can set up the A/B test. So obviously, there's still the part where you have to set up the SDK inside of your Unity project, but you're setting up the A/B test itself afterwards, the cohort values and stuff on the website that we have. And you can track your data live through this website as well. So if I set up an A/B test, like, I don't know, tomorrow, and I want to check the data and how it goes on the, what day are we, Saturday, on Monday or Tuesday, I will be able to see if there was a positive impact on all the metrics that I would want to look, like, for example, impressions per user, playtime, retention. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be able to see a day 3 retention if there is only day 1. 1 day goes on, but yeah, you can check everything per cohort and check the differences. So you can be very fast moving. If in like day 2 of testing, you see that there's clearly one cohort performing way better than the others, you don't necessarily have to go through the whole test. You can actually set up through the platform, through the live platform, and put 100% of the users on the cohort that is performing best. So yeah, that is how it goes for us, and it allows for a perfect level of transparency and a very fast communication between the studios and ourselves, obviously. So yeah, that's the most effective way that we found to A/B test our project. And having it completely remote facilitates a lot of things as well for the studio, because it's a very tedious process, usually A/B testing with SDKs and stuff. So it just simplifies it for everybody. I'm suffering a little bit of latency myself on this. Can I do it? Yeah. Okay. I wanted to talk about a specific example, like I said, which I'm very familiar with because I was the one in charge of Giant Rush as a publishing manager, and show you a little bit of the metrics that we got on this game. Because I've been talking very general aspects. I wanted to show you a little bit of exclusive information, I want to say. So far, to do the pitch of Giant Rush, we saw 70 million downloads as of June 2021. I actually checked it this morning. At this point, Giant Rush is 95 million downloads in total. It was published on the 24th of December 2020, so almost a year ago. So we'll probably be able to celebrate 100 million downloads by 24th of December this year. Hurrah to us, I guess. It was a game that was top 7 in iOS. It stayed in the top 20 for 2 consecutive months, and it was top 2 in Android in the US, top 1 even, and it stayed in the top 10, I think top 15 for 2 consecutive months. In about 6 months of publish, it had generated 12 million revenue, which is a really performing game. And when it comes to the LTV itself, I've put you a chart in there. When we started publishing the game, LTV day 0 was 31 cents, which is a really good LTV to start with. And as we worked on the game and A/B tested different features, different gameplay elements, we got this day 1 to 59 cents, day 0 LTV to 59 cents. And when it comes to the day 30 that you can see in the pink line, we started at a 61 cents day 30 LTV. And after about 5 to 6 months of A/B testing and improvements, we got it up to $1.2 at day 30. And of course, this only stops at day 30, but an LTV keeps on improving after that, also on day 60 and day 90, so it doesn't stop there. But obviously, this is really helpful because I've mentioned that the game stayed in the top 20 and the top 15 for 2 consecutive months, and having improved the LTV plays a big part in that. Because as you improve the LTV, it also allows for UA managers, the user acquisition branch, to increase the CPI and the bidding in order to acquire more users and keep the game live and well on the top charts for a longer time. So it's really all positive aspect. Playing with the LTV also allows for more room for UA managers on the CPI side of things. So let's get to what we did specifically to improve those metrics in Giant Rush, some examples. So some features that were tested and had a really good impact on metrics. Maybe some of you are already familiar with the game itself. One that was big last year, now it's pretty much implemented in every game that you can see, specifically runners, is the moving gouge multiplayer. So this is a rewarded placement at the end of the level where you have this gouge that is moving left to right with a button that you can stop the gouge and multipliers. So if I stop it at time 3, I'm getting 3 times the amount of money that I actually collected during the run. If I stop it at times 5, I'm getting 5 times that. This had a 40% increase of impressions per user when it comes to rewarded watched in the game. So it had a big impact for us in terms of the LTV. Another thing that was tested pretty rapidly after about a month of skill in the game is the wall-breaking slow motion animation happening in the game. So this was a big one. When you are kicking out your opponent at the end of the track, the opponent is being pushed further away, the more power you have, and we set up a wall that the character goes through, and a slow motion, like, you know, action movie type of things. Every time you're increasing, there's an incremental button in the beginning of the playthrough, basically, and every time you're increasing the multiplier that you can reach, you're going to have this wall appear on a track, and it's very satisfying visually, and it's something that we saw pushed the players to come back more. Actually, we got an increase of day 1 retention by 4%, which is a huge jump for such a, I would say, small feature in the end. It's not low work for sure. It was quite an ad, but yeah, it was something that wasn't necessarily super intuitive from the get-go. And one final thing that we tested as well. So I mentioned the fact that bonus and boss level implementation in runners have a big impact. And we thought of adding on top of that and doing a special boss level. So it doesn't happen every 5 level, it happens every 10 level, where you have a bigger boss that appears. And there's a special mechanic in there where you're not just tapping in order to beat up the boss, you actually have to swipe in order to avoid his strikes. And this had a huge increase as well. It increased the day 1 by 2% and the day 3 by 4%. So once again, it goes to show that specifically when it comes to runners, adding some different gameplay elements that switches up and adds variety to the gameplay loop will have a big impact, because runners are such simple core gameplay loop games. So yeah, these are just some of the examples of what we did on Giant Rush, but we tested many more things. I think for the first 3 months of A/B testing on Giant Rush, we only had positive impact when we A/B tested stuff, and afterwards we started seeing obviously some less positive impact. So you reach a ceiling at some point when you A/B test. And now it is time for the Q&A session. Maybe some of you have questions about some of the information that I brought to you, or the A/B test and how it goes on our side, or I don't know, about LTV in general.
Nice talk, thanks. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. Yeah, just a sec.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Eugene. I'm a product manager in the Go Kids company. We produce kids games. And my question is about could you please give a little more explanation on the audio ads?
Okay.
How do they work? How do users interact with it? Concerning that you don't provide any visual implementation or some interactive elements. Thank you.
Okay.
And what products do you advertise using these ads?
Sorry, what product?
Are you trying to sell using these ads? I mean,
how do we sell these ads? Well,
no. what
for which
what-
games we tested this?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, so we started tested actually audio ads, I would say, about a month ago. And we tested it in Gyrush, one of our more performing game overall. And it goes, well, you have an audio cut happening during the track itself. So now I would say that Gyrush is a pretty ad-heavy game because you have this balloon on the track where you have in-game ads, you have interstitial and rewarded pretty much boosted to the maximum possible, and now you also have audio happening during your track. But it's something that I would say, you know, that there was YouTube videos sometimes saying about subliminal ads happening on TV. I would say that it's something very close to that because the player doesn't necessarily notice the audio head as he plays, but there's cuts that are going to impact his, I would say, vision, quote unquote. And it's very low eCPM, so it's not a huge money changer when it comes to revenue. But once again, it's a small addition to what you already have. And in terms of implementation and I would say the time invested in terms of work is very minimal because it's just another SDK to implement, and then you put it live, and then you let the algorithm basically generate the best placement for you, the best ad for you in the game. So did I answer your question or? Pretty much. Okay. But yeah, for now we tested it in Gyrush and we're spreading it out to our other products as well. Sneaker art is going to be tested actually next week. I hope I answered your question. Does anybody else has a question? Yeah.
Hi, thank you for
Hi.
presentation. It's
Thank you.
amazing knowledge. And I have one follow-up question, first of all, about audio ads. So how do you track users for, who usually mute music in-game, and how it impact on audio ads, yeah?
I'm not sure I heard right because the audio isn't so super good. How do I track users?
Yeah, that usually mute music in-game, yeah?
Uh-huh.
And do you track it, and how it impact on audio ads, yeah?
Yeah. So actually, we don't track it per se because it's a personally I'm not a developer, but I don't know how to set up this type of tracking. But you can see a difference in terms of revenue and in terms of metrics. So that's how you're going to track it. If you're implementing only this new feature in your new build and you see it tick up or tick down, you know that it's because of this implementation, basically. But yeah, in terms of tracking it, having an event specifically for if the player is playing with volume or not, no. I personally don't know if it's trackable.
Okay, and my questions, I have a few.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
First of all, what is the average revenue share for in-game ads, for audio ads, like in compare with total revenue stream?
You mean with the monetization partner of in-game ads?
I mean, for let's take a look on one game, yeah, and you have some total revenue for the game.
Mm-hmm.
In-app, it adds, and what is a part of this income from?
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah, I
in-game and audio ads.
Basically, how much percent? What is the percentage value that it adds when you add in-game ads in the game? Generally speaking, I would say it's about 4 or 5%. That's what we've seen on our games. I don't have much else to add on this. It's very...
And a few more. And what you mentioned about MVP. So you launch MVP and test Cpi Test. And what are you usually calling MVP? It's just, is it a few completely done levels, or it's some very core based mechanic and you're testing it? What?
This is actually a question that I get a lot of times coming from studios, because we want to be as fast as possible when it comes to the prototyping, but also have something that is quality oriented for the first players that get in. I would say that for a runner, what I usually say is that the first 5 levels are what really matters, because we want to have a level design that is good for the creative aspect of things, so something that is actually polished for the first levels, and afterwards just loop it around, because usually players, hyper-casual game isn't a super, I would say, challenging mechanics, so they play a little bit unconsciously, I want to say. So if they are interested in the mechanic itself and what happens on the screen visually specifically, they're going to keep playing even if the levels just loop around. They don't notice that they are playing the same levels. So for a runner, I would say about 5 levels is what really matters for a first test. The visuals have to be polished, though. Visuals are important, and the game feel itself is very important. For other types of game, every type of game is different, obviously. If you're working on a puzzle, you want to have a little more content, because this is the players are going to notice that the levels are the same, because they are actually focused on what's happening on the screen and they are thinking. So for puzzle, I usually recommend 20 levels for a first test. For a simulation game, it is more about visuals and the mechanic itself being satisfying and looking really good. Like I said, simulation game takes longer. Usually it takes 2 or 3 weeks to have a polished simulation game for a first test. But you don't have to have a lot of levels for simulation games. I don't recommend it, at least, because it's very heavy in terms of time investment. So I would say that having, for example, for Sneaker, the first test that we had 3 different shoes in there. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. It's clear.
Thank you.
And one more, last one.
Go ahead.
You mentioned about A/B test platform. So is it something that you have in-house, or it's open some company, or it's a SaaS solution?
What do we have in-house?
Do you have you mentioned about A/B test platform? So is it in-house, your own, yeah, or it's open and everyone can use it?
No, it is our own SDK, and it is in-house.
Oh, okay. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other questions? Yes.
Yes. Hello, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Quite insightful. Okay, sorry. I'd like to know what's users base you consider for test to be significant statistically.
What user base?
If it's specific geo, and how many users basically you need to consider your A/B test statistically significant.
Okay. Yeah, very good question, actually. For an A/B test to be relevant, I would say that you need at least, it's same as a first CPI test, I would say you need at the very least 200 players. If we are in a soft launch period and we're getting 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 users per day, you want to have 1,000 users. I would say that the perfect number of users for a cohort to be very representative in terms of metrics is 1,000. If you can have 1,000 player per cohort, that's the best. And I would say anything above that is just a bonus. For example, and this was something that was core to testing Giant Rush, because we had a lot of players coming in every day, specifically in the first month of launching the game. So we were able to A/B test specific features with very small percentage of users. For example, the cohorts were like 2 to 3% of the overall amount of users that we were getting. And you want to keep that number as low as possible, because you never know, something that you test might be very negative to the product itself. So you want to keep that number as low as possible, but at the same time have a representative number of users in order to make sure. So yeah, 1,000 is the basis. If you're in soft launch, 200, 300 is okay, and keep that percentage as low as possible. Very good question.
Any other questions? I guess we are out of them. Oh, yeah, we have one more.
Hi, Florian.
Hello.
Cool talk. Thanks.
Nice to meet you, man.
My question is, given such short development time that you mentioned in the beginning, how long do your gameplay feature tests usually take? What if you don't have meaningful results on day 2 or day 3? How long do you wait?
Okay, so hyper-casual is, I would say, a day 7 oriented market. So usually when we test the first CPI test and also the A/B tests that we do in the soft launch period and the publish period, it's about 4 or 5 days maximum. Like that's all we need to be 100% sure of the impact that we're going to have on our game. Like I would say maybe in our catalog, only exception to that rule is the game Cornhole, which is a sports versus oriented game. It has a bigger retention day 14, day 30. So when we A/B test for a longer time in order to see the impact also on those metrics. But in hyper-casual, generally speaking, 4 or 5 days is all you need.
Okay, thanks. And another question is, which do you find generally more impactful of the A/B tests, the gameplay features or the monetization, and what's the proportion, like usually?
Yeah, I would say that it's a mix, because the biggest impact I've seen on games has definitely come from gameplay features. Something that added to the core. You have to ask yourself, what is the most interesting aspect of my game? What is appealing to users, and trying to intensify that. If you can intensify it, you're going to see the biggest impact in terms of metrics, playtime, retention, impressions per user and stuff. But at the same time, in hyper-casual, there's, I would say, tricks when it comes to the monetization aspect that you can do in order to improve the impressions per user that you're getting, specifically on the rewarded video side of things. That can also have a big impact. So definitely the best thing is gameplay features, but you can also have very good positive impact with monetization techniques, I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for
Hello.
the talk.
Thank you very much.
I would like to ask about the first stage when you test the CPI of
Yeah.
the product. Where do you prefer to test, like Facebook or networks? Which is more preferable
Yeah.
for your company?
So in the past, before pre-iOS 14, we used to test on Facebook. But nowadays, all our tests, in the first test, we test on TikTok, actually. We've seen the lowest CPI, I would say, in the last 5 to 6 months on TikTok. It's a different audience, though. Like Facebook audience and TikTok audience is not the same. Usually it's lower-aged audience on TikTok. But this is where we see the lowest CPI. And it hasn't changed much when it comes to... You could ask yourself the question, like, okay, we switched network on which we test. Does it have an impact on soft launch? For example, even if we're getting a low CPI on TikTok, do we get low CPIs on other networks once we move on to the soft launch period? And virtually we've seen no changes when it comes to that. Like Facebook and TikTok, pretty much, I would say, very healthy environment for testing. But nowadays, yeah, on hyper-casual, I would recommend TikTok in first test.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Florian.
Hello.
And thanks for a very insightful talk with several interesting use cases that you've brought.
Thank you for your kind words.
Yeah. So my question is, let's assume we have a hypothetical situation. We're testing this prototype on TikTok, and we have day 1 retention at 25 to day 30 range.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of okay-ish, but the CPI is just not there. Like, it's bigger than 40 cents. It's like $1 or something. And what's your usual thought process? How many iterations do you make in terms of ads optimization or stuff like this before you decide to kill off the project?
Very good question. So obviously in hyper-casual, the most important is definitely CPI. Because if you have a high CPI, it means that it's not really an hyper-casual game because it appeals to a more niche audience. And niche is a big word. Like $1 CPI is not necessarily niche. But I would say that it's different for every game. Because if there's something that is really working on a gameplay aspect of things and you see very high playtime and very good retention, we might, for example, you mentioned I don't know, let's say 800 seconds playtime and 30% day 1 retention, but the CPI is $1. We might want to give it another shot when it comes to the creative. Maybe we haven't showcased the base segment of gameplay in the CPI test. Maybe there's something that makes more sense. Maybe we can twist around a little bit the context, the visuals, in order to make it more intuitive, more appealing to audience. So in that case, I would say that we would give it another shot in terms if the playtime and the retention is there. But if obviously if the playtime and retention are average, let's say 50% day one, let's say 300, 400 seconds, it's better to just kill off the project because hyper-casual is a very fast-moving market. You don't want to spend too much time on a product that doesn't have a high chance percentage of getting through that publish phase. So yeah, I would say that if the metrics are average, you have to kill the game. Getting attached to a product on hyper-casual is very dangerous, generally speaking.
All right, thanks for your answer. And I have one more question. So, what's your preferred approach to ads mediation between the platform? I'd assume you have some like custom-built mediation platform. At which point do you think it's worthwhile to move to like custom mediation compared to using something like Iron Source or something?
To be honest, I'm not sure how to answer that question because when it comes to mediation platform, we use AppLovin on our side, and like I said, we move on to implementing the mediation at a stage where we have the retention, we have the playtime, we have the CPI, we put the ads, just let's go. I would say that in the publish phase, I know that we implement a lot of different monetization SDKs and stuff like that, but I don't think we change our mediation platform. Then again, I wouldn't take my own word for it. I'm trying to look at my user acquisition to see if he has another answer, but he's on his phone, so.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I guess we have no more questions, but thanks a lot for an interesting talk.
And thank you for the mediation, Natalia, as well.
Yeah.